I'm going to give you a few bits of post-Halloween Havoc 89 news. Terry Funk was recently returning from suspension, quote-unquote, after the plastic bag incident that keeps coming up when we talk about it, actually, recently. And would go on to lose to Flair at Clash of the Champions and their legendary I Quit match. Elsewhere, the big angle is the genius Lanny Poffo defeating Hulk Hogan via disqualification on a Saturday night's main event, and Mr. Perfect smashing up Hogan's belt with a hammer. The reformation of Akira Maeda's UWF is the success story of the year. New Japan announces shows to be run in the Soviet Union, which I thought was a funny little tidbit. Continental Wrestling Association, aka Memphis, would cease to be and later take the name of the USWA, which Dallas had already renamed itself when Jerry Jarrett took over because they were like WCWA for a brief period. It's very confusing. And then Dallas would exit USWA with some lawsuits thrown in September 1990, so about 10 months after this pay-per-view, and revert back to world-class name before shutting up shop a couple of months later. Jim Cornette then would turn on the Dynamic Dudes a couple of weeks after this pay-per-view, and at the very well-regarded Clash 9 knockout in New York, fully expecting to turn the Midnight Express fully heel. That did not happen. So to close out this show, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. If we did, we sort of talked about it partially. Didn't fully delve into it. So the last question I'll ask you is, what you remember of Jim Cornette turning on the Dynamic Dudes, and what did you expect to happen with the reaction of the crowd?
Well, in that town, exactly what happened. It was definitely a heel town. If memory serves correct, and I'm pretty certain it does in this case, we were told that, and I believe from Jim Ross, that the company had felt that they had gotten as much as they could out of Cornette with Midnight. Like they'd run all the different storylines could possibly run. And it was a way to sort of re-energize Corny and give Midnight Express a new life, which in the match we saw them as baby faces, I thought was just awful. It just wasn't Midnight Express. By this time, though, we come down to this final point for this angle between Midnight and the Dudes and Cornette stuck somewhere in between, and we learned that it was Corny turning on us. It didn't take a brain surgeon in this business to figure out this was a swerve on their part, because it made us look young and dumb, and that to me was always the stuff with wrestling booking that angered me. I'm a big boy, so I can count all the way to 20 if I can take my shoes off. Just come to me and tell me what you need. I'm the actor that's going to get shot in this scene today. This is the scene we're shooting. You don't have to lie to me. You don't have to manipulate me. And I can probably work a lot better and give you what you want if you're honest and upfront with me. But this is not how the industry then or now apparently worked. So, instead of seeing, my naivete from coming from small podunk Beaver County, Pennsylvania, I believe that if you were the guy that went in, did what the boss asked you to do, you worked hard for the boss, you did what's asked of you, you're contributing and giving ideas and everything else, I just assume that'd be the guy I'd want to work with, instead of the pain in the ass. Oh God, it's James complaining again. Okay, James, let's rub your tootsies for you and take care of you. And it wasn't that way. It's not that way. And I think it's to the detriment of our business and our product when you have somebody, say Hulk Hogan, and I'm not picking on him, I'm just using him because we've heard this so often and I'd seen it so often from him. Well, I'm not laying down for them. I'm not laying down for them. Edit back to the comments about not being willing to work with or put somebody over. This becomes just a cancer that eats its way through. And in a business that's a work, you could see how that would spread. Like if I can get away with it, if they can get away with it, why can't I get away with it? And, at some point you get down far enough on the card where you go, okay, well, we don't really need you that badly, James. So if you don't want to do it, we'll see you. But this part was okay in doing that. And now you start to get this like two-tiered system, right? Well, okay, these guys can get away with this, but we can't. And there's nothing that will tear a wrestling dressing room, locker room apart faster than that. Camps will split up almost immediately, And now instead of everybody, like you've often heard me talk about the ECW locker room, everybody working together and pushing in the same direction. Now it becomes, I'm pushing left, you're pushing right, somebody else is pushing back, somebody else is pushing up. And meanwhile, the product is all over the place. Nobody's giving a consistent product. WCW's talent roster at this time versus WWF, and I think throughout much of their existence, was the much stronger per wrestling product than WWF. And instead of them capitalizing on their own strength, it's suddenly they're trying to become more like Sports Entertainment Light or Junior. And it's it's the same thing I talked about with David Sammartino and David Flair. Don't try to be your dad. That's been done to perfection. You're never going to outdo them at being Flair or Bruno. The same thing here. Vince, nobody's going to have top Vince or WWE at being WWE and sports entertainment. So go for that different genre. And again, the 48 to 50 million of them that are still out there, and now their kids and grandkids. My guess is they'll probably spend their money on it, but what the hell would I know? I've only been doing this for 41 years. So it's sad. And you see at this time, I remember the pop when Funk finally gave up in the match against Flair. These two guys are starting to get to the second latter half of their careers, right? And certainly no longer the primary guys, but they could still go out there and work that crowd. And it's just like a maestro playing an orchestra. And then you compare that to, the WWF part of the time. Okay, there's some good work. They had Brett and they had Kurt, and there's a lot of Jake. There's a lot of great workers up there. But in the WWF, those great workers were seen as the tool to get this guy over that's maybe not quite as good as they are. And in WCW, they started following that as well. The earlier incarnation of NWA and then morphing into WCW was, okay, this kid can go. Let's give it that's why Pillman was hired, right? By standards of the business then, he was smaller than me, and I was small in the business. But Jim Ross and the different people that had seen him realized he could get in the ring and do this and go. Tully's not a giant either. There's a lot of guys that weren't giants, but I don't ever remember watching the Four Horsemen and somebody going, yeah, but look how short Tully is, or look how, whatever. It's, there was wrap with this because it's repeating in final time. WCW and /NWA or NWA in parentheses had forgotten all of their strengths and voluntarily flushed them down the drain in this zeal to become better at sports entertainment than WWE, which is never going to happen. Vince created it, Vince mastered it, Vince knows what it is. But I would maintain to my dying breath, there's a lot of fans out there that don't like sports entertainment, that want professional wrestling. And so by and large, for the last 4 years now, for lack of 24 years, our industry has completely forgotten about us that like wrestling and apparently don't want our money and want to continue down that, what today would be termed spot monkey or whatever else. And it's completely baffling to me as to why.
To focus back on exactly that turn, as it were, how was it presented to you and how should it have been done to be a successful turn? Or was there no way that you were going to come out on top with Jim Cornette turning on you?
Well, I had bought into the way it was pitched to us that, that Corny had been at this point, 6, 7, 8 years with Midnight, the different incarnations. But I'll also say this, Jim Cornette is a phenomenal heel, right? And so I think in my head, and I think John and I even had conversations, this was, we go with Corny or Corny comes with us, whichever way. And now, instead of continuing to be those sugary baby faces, he takes us over to the dark side. And, which was originally Eddie Gilbert's idea to turn us heel. So, and I think, I improved a little bit as a heel after that. I'm sure Johnny, his natural tendency and personality, much like mine, can be a acerbic. So I think it would have been a lot more interesting to go that way. And that's in no means taking anything away from what Corny and Bobby and Stan created after that with Midnight, because I've always been a huge fan for Midnight Express. And Corny, his political views aside.